Shitty ex-wife is now dying. How to be there for my adult son despite being bitter. My ex-wife conducted affairs with 3 guys at the same time at the end of the marriage. She was a manager and fired someone. That someone took revenge and called me to tell me about one guy. She was seeing him on her lunch hour, which, after a bit of trickle truth, served to reveal there were 3 guys. She then spent a few hours, face to face and on the phone on a couple of occasions comparing me to one of the guys she was seeing. This is in addition to her physical and emotional abuse in the marriage. I have a scar and several hospital bills to prove the physical abuse. She also treats our son like shit. She is angry that he is gay. I'm extremely bitter towards her. Now, several years after the divorce, while she is with a 4th man, she has been diagnosed with a very aggressive cancer and wants to talk to me phone. She moved several hours away. She likely has 60 or 90 days left. But I have to be there for our adult son. I have to admit to thinking, it couldn't happen to a better person. It's a terrible thing to think, but the though won't leave. I hate that I am such a shithead thinking this. I am disgusted with myself, and am struggling with that thought while trying to be there for our son. I'm a horrid, disgusting person for this thought, but it won't leave. I'm sick about myself for this, and I don't deserve his love. But I need to be there for him. I disgust myself. He deserves a better man for a dad. How do I get rid of this thought? How do I stop being so disgusting? How can I be there for my son while being such a terrible person with such a terrible thought? Should I speak with her on the phone as she requested? Should I tell her she is forgiven? Assuming that's what she wants to speak about. She isn't, but I can fake it. Story 2. My 39 female partner, 40 male, of 4 years treats me like crap for making more money than him. I think my partner uses me like a maid to make up for the fact that I out-earn him by a lot. My partner and I have been together for 4 years and living together for 2. We have 3 kiddos between the 2 of us and a bunch of pets. Before we started dating, I was doing the single mom thing, raising my kids, handling the house and taking care of all the business. I am a rock star at this stuff because I have to be. He moved into my house from an apartment because it is big enough for all of us, in the best school district in our city, and I own it. The balance was always a little off from the start because he and his daughter moved into a household that was already running like a well-oiled machine. We let his daughter pick out all new furniture and move bedrooms around so that everyone has their own space. I wanted us to build a life together and stressed to everyone that this space and all our stuff is now ours. I treat his daughter just like any of the other kids, and I'm team mom for her sporting events just as I am for my kids. His daughter will do chores when asked just like the other kids, but my partner just refuses. He makes a mess and I am left cleaning up. I am exhausted cooking, cleaning, carpools, sporting event snacks, doing laundry, doing all the shopping, yard work and home repairs. My partner insists on dinner being ready when he gets home, and all his laundry ironed in a certain manner. Our house and cars are expected to be in meticulous condition because that is apparently a reflection of how far we have made it. Of note, I grew up upper middle class, he was poor. On top of all this, I work in a high-pressure job. During the pandemic, his job took a huge hit, and I told him to not worry about paying rent or the bills. Everything is in my name, and again, I have been handling it all on my own, so it wasn't a huge hit to my budget. I make over 6 figures and have done a decent job of budgeting. Well, things have picked back up for him, and even though I have asked, he just doesn't feel like he needs to be paying rent or helping with bills anymore because everything is ours. He makes significantly less than I do, and I never asked for equal financial contribution, just equitable. The rent he paid early on was considerably less than his apt or market rate for rooms in a house like mine. He buys watches, haircuts, shoes, clothes and cologne with his paychecks. He travels for work sometimes and insists on flying first class. He works for himself, so this comes out of his paycheck. It's all about appearances. I bought a new car to fit the family better, which I guess technically is a luxury vehicle. He got annoyed that I had a nice new car and insists on being the one to drive it around and show off. I do all the pickups and drop-offs for school and sports, and need the extra row of seats for hauling carpools around, but he still wants to drive it to meet with clients because it's a status symbol. He makes backhanded comments about my car all the time, saying things like for 70K that car should be picking up the kids for you, etc. He gets pissed at me for taking the dogs in the car because they will ruin the seats and honestly doesn't even like me picking up a bunch of muddy stinky preteens after sports either. I feel like I am being punished for asking him to pay rent and owning a nice car. When I brought up the fact that I am doing too much around the house on top of my 50/60 HRS/WK job, he told me to hire more help. I already have landscapers, but now he thinks I should pay for a housekeeper too. I don't think I should be paying to pick up his slack. I have the kids helping out where they can, but they also have busy schedules with school, sports, and social lives. How the heck do I get him to shut the F up about my money? Is he trying to knock me down a few pegs with all the housework to feel better about himself? Story 3. Contemplating separation/divorce. BC partner can't take jokes from other people. My 29F husband, 30M, of 3 years gets irrationally mad when people make jokes at his expense, but he unwaveringly likes to make jokes at other people. This typically wouldn't lead to a discussion of divorce. However, every time his anger at his friends for cracking jokes ends up being taken out in some way on me. This past weekend this same thing happened, and it has me contemplating if I should continue this relationship. This past weekend, I hosted a couples trip for some of our friends to get together for birthdays. He and the guys, some of which are friends, began jawing back and forth at one another about foot races and basketball at the breakfast table. The attention was placed on him, and he did not like that everyone didn't consider him the fastest person, and two of the guys were adamant that he could not beat them. My husband, in defense of himself, starts to tell manipulated versions of times we ran together to show that he's so much faster than I am, even though I was not involved in the conversation at all. That habit of his grew to be a huge pet peeve of mine, so I called him out on not telling the full truth about that story with everyone else present. He continues to jaw with his friends and get more intense and serious with them. Then here's where things go downhill. My husband proceeds to get up from the table to grab his shoes. When he comes back down, he continues to aggressively bait the others into racing. But since breakfast was about to be finished, no one would go with him. He then makes a dramatic return of his shoes while coming back down to the table and sitting at a completely different table than everyone else. He sits there and sulks and pouts and makes loud comments to his friends about they don't wanna put words to their actions, until someone else goes and asks him if he's okay. It was a rather ridiculous scene from my perspective. For the next 2 hours, he walks around barely speaking to anyone, talking to others to get them to have his back in the argument, and just acting weird for lack of a better term. Before we go get ready to leave for the next event, we're in our room and I stated, if you're going to continue sulking and acting this way, please don't come with us. It's my birthday weekend and I want to have a good time, but I do not want to deal with his attitude or behavior. After I say this, he begins to yell about how he's over it, and he hasn't been sulking and how there is no problem. I asked if people were acting as he did when he picks at them. Would that not be weird? He says if they have a problem with what he says, they should confront him. I also asked him if he thought it was normal that people were asking me if he was okay after sulking all morning. He said if people feel like something was wrong, they should ask him themselves. This turned into a screaming match for a few minutes in front of all of our friends. It was frankly embarrassing, so I stopped screaming, but he continued to scream, trying to get everyone he passed in the hallways to be on his side and have his back in our argument. I apologized to everyone I could get a hold of because I felt bad for making such a scene. We went to the activities later in the day in separate cars, but we did not speak to one another. At one activity, he bought me a 7-Cup and gave it to me as if that was an apology. Never apologized. But he had time to talk with our friends about what happened, and they came and told me. None of that mattered because there was never a formal apology to me or anyone else that I was aware of. Later in the night, he tried to get me other snacks and gifts, which I refused. He then tried to hug and kiss me and asked me if I wanted some of his food. I stated no, what I want is you to apologize to me and everyone else as I did earlier. We haven't spoken since. This is not the first time something like this has boiled over, but this is the biggest boil over and blow up. We don't argue about the big things as much, but the small things become unnecessarily large on a regular basis. It is a lot to deal with, and I am unsure of why his arguments and disagreements with his friends over trivial things turn into massive arguments between us.